The night had settled over the city like a velvet curtain, deep blue and scattered with trembling constellations, yet for Elara, it felt as if the world had only just begun to breathe. Midnight had a strange way of slowing everything down. Cars disappeared from the streets, lights softened into amber glows, and even the wind seemed to move with intention. She stood on the rooftop of her building, leaning gently on the cool iron railing, her silky black dress catching the faint strokes of the moonlight. Her heartbeat echoed softly in her ears, a blend of anticipation and quiet longing she couldn't quite name. Below her, the city pulsed with a distant hum. But up here, everything was still enough that she could hear her own breath, steady and slow. She closed her eyes, letting the breeze brush against her like a familiar whisper, carrying the faint smell of jasmine from the garden 2 floors down. This rooftop had always been her escape, her sanctuary, the place she allowed her emotions to unravel without fear. Tonight, however, it held a different weight. It felt charged, as though the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting. She sensed it the moment she stepped out of the stairwell. The faint tremor in the air, the way the moon shimmered brighter, the way her skin prickled with an unspoken awareness. And then she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, unmistakably familiar. Adrian emerged through the open rooftop door, the warm, golden hallway light framing his silhouette before the darkness embraced him. He wore a simple black shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing the veins along his forearms, lit subtly by the silver glow of the night. His hair was tousled by the wind, his eyes reflecting the city lights below, forming a constellation all their own. He paused for a moment, just long enough for their gazes to meet, before walking toward her with a quiet smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Elara felt her pulse race, not with nervousness, but with a sense of inevitability she had resisted for far too long. His presence always had that effect on her. It felt like stepping into warmth after being cold for years. "You're awake," he murmured, voice low and warm, each word somehow softer than the last. She offered a faint, knowing smile. "Couldn't sleep." He came to stand beside her, resting his palms lightly on the railing, eyes drifting to the stars above. "Neither could I," he said, but the way he looked at her in the reflection of the window beside them made it clear he wasn't talking about the night. For a long moment, they simply stood in silence, their shoulders brushing lightly every time the wind shifted, each touch sparking a subtle electricity that neither dared acknowledge aloud. But the air between them was thick with unspoken desires, with the weight of nights spent thinking of each other, with the longing neither had dared to confess. Midnight was the hour where honesty lived, and tonight, its silver glow wrapped around them like a gentle insistence, urging their hearts to speak before the night slipped away. A soft gust of wind swept across the rooftop, rustling Elara's hair and sending a strand drifting gently across her face. Without thinking, Adrian reached out, fingertips brushing her cheek as he tucked it behind her ear. The moment his skin touched hers, the breath caught in her throat. It wasn't the first time he had touched her, not technically, but this touch was different. It lingered. It spoke. It confessed. His hand rested along her jawline, warm and steady, his thumb grazing the curve of her cheek as though testing whether the moment was real. Elara leaned subtly into his touch, her eyes lifting to meet his with a softness that cut through every wall she had built. The rooftop seemed to shrink around them, the night folding closer, the stars gathering like silent witnesses to a truth that neither could hide anymore. Adrian's heart pounded painfully against his ribs, each beat resonating with the intensity of the moment. He had loved her quietly, deeply, and from a distance that had always felt too close and yet never close enough. He could see the reflection of his feelings in her eyes now, shimmering beneath the moonlight like liquid silver, vulnerable, open, honest. "Elara," he whispered, her name falling from his lips with a tenderness he didn't know he still possessed. "I've tried to stay away, but every night, somehow, I end up here, thinking of you." The confession slipped from him like a breath he had been holding for too long. She didn't look away. She didn't retreat. Instead, she stepped closer, closing the small distance between their bodies until only a whisper of space remained. The heat of their proximity washed over them, dizzying, intoxicating. Her voice trembled slightly as she replied, "I know. I felt it too." The honesty hung between them, fragile yet powerful, charged with the tension of years of unspoken emotions finally finding their moment. Adrian's hand moved from her cheek to the back of her neck, his fingers threading softly into her hair. The sensation sent shivers racing across her skin, her breath catching again as she felt her resolve melting. She could feel the warmth of his breath brushing against her lips, the steady rise and fall of his chest mirroring her own. Every second stretched, slow and deep, as though time itself had chosen to wait for them. When he finally pulled her into his arms, it felt like stepping into a place she had been searching for her entire life. Her body fit perfectly against his, her head resting against his chest, listening to the rapid, uneven rhythm of his heartbeat. His arms tightened around her waist, grounding her, claiming her, promising her something she had been too afraid to hope for. Their breaths mingled, their hearts sinking in a rhythm older than words, older than time. Adrian lowered his forehead to hers, their noses brushing softly, their lips hovering a moment away from something that felt sacred. "I don't want this night to end," she whispered. He closed his eyes, exhaling softly. "Then let's make it last forever." The moon hung low now, casting soft ripples of silver light over the rooftop, illuminating their entwined silhouettes like a painting frozen in time. Elara's head remained against Adrian's chest, rising gently with each of his breaths, her fingers tracing soft patterns along the fabric of his shirt. The world around them felt impossibly distant, the honking cars, the city lights, the ticking clocks that normally ruled their days. None of it mattered here. Midnight had woven a cocoon around them, one where the only reality was the warmth of his arms and the steady promise in the way he held her. Adrian slid his fingers slowly down her spine, the movement delicate yet deliberate, sending a quiet shiver whispering through her body. She lifted her face to look at him, her eyes luminous, her lips slightly parted from the closeness of their embrace. He studied her expression carefully, the soft flush on her cheeks, the shimmering reflection of moonlight in her eyes, the way her breath trembled when he leaned closer. Everything about her felt achingly beautiful, heartbreakingly present. "Elara," he murmured, brushing his fingers along her jaw as if memorizing the shape of her. "I don't want to go back to pretending." She swallowed slowly, her voice a gentle whisper when she answered, "Then don't." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything they had held back for years, all the nights they spent wondering, all the almost confessions swallowed down, all the stolen glances that burned with suppressed longing. Adrian's hand slid to her waist, pulling her closer until their bodies pressed fully together, the warmth of his touch igniting something deep inside her. She felt her heart pounding wildly, but for the first time, it wasn't with fear, it was with the thrilling intensity of being finally, completely seen. Their lips met in a kiss that began softly, almost hesitantly, as though both were afraid the moment might shatter like a fragile dream. But when her hands moved to cup his face, and his arms tightened around her, the kiss deepened into something slow and consuming, filled with years of unspoken desire. It was gentle yet desperate, tender yet electric, the kind of kiss that rewrote the meaning of time. The rooftop disappeared. The sky vanished. There was only the taste of him, the warmth of him, the sound of his breath merging with hers like a shared secret the world could never steal. When they finally parted, their foreheads met again, their breaths unsteady, their hearts racing as though trying to leap toward each other. Adrian cradled her face in both hands, his voice breaking slightly as he whispered, "Stay with me tonight. Not just here, but in every night after this." Elara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not of sadness, but of the overwhelming tenderness blooming inside her. "I will," she whispered. "As long as the night still knows your name. I will." He pulled her into his chest again, holding her tightly as the first soft hint of dawn began to touch the horizon. But even as morning approached, they remained wrapped in each other, knowing that their midnight wasn't ending, it was becoming the beginning of everything they had ever dreamed of. And so, beneath the fading moon and the soft promise of a rising sun, two hearts that had wandered for far too long finally found home in the quiet, eternal warmth of midnight love.